Hey, folks, welcome back to the Carl Zahn Show, episode 9, I believe, episode 9er. Before we get into things, going to ask everybody, please like, share, subscribe, send this around with your friends. We're trying to grow the channel. And again, urging people to feel free to comment if there's content you like, content you don't like, etc. More things you'd like to see or any changes you'd like to see with the show, please let me know. Once again, always looking for opinions as long as you agree with me. What a fascinating week in the news here, politically and otherwise. So right out of the gate, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is President Biden's wandering speech last week, where he began to talk about his Uncle Ambrose Finnegan. And let me say right out of the gate, as the son of a World War II veteran, we're going to have some fun with this, but it's not to degrade someone who served the country, World War II. This uncle of Joe Biden did, in fact, die in a plane crash that went down. But Biden's retelling of the story is just so phenomenal. And I don't attribute this to Biden's senility. I attribute this to Biden's stupidity. He's just, to me, always been a shallow man. So last week he's in Pennsylvania, I think, and he's doing one of his campaign stops. And then he begins, he always recites this story about Trump having called some World War II soldiers or a cemetery that he was visiting losers and suckers. And again, Biden, and it's been demonstrated that that never happened. Trump never said that, but as is often the case, with not just Biden, but the left in general, they continue to repeat this lie over and over and over again. And of course, that's what gaslighting is. You just say the same lie over and over and over again until people begin to either believe it or think that they're crazy for not believing it. So last week is just phenomenal. Biden, and I'm sure everyone's heard of it, unless you're living on another planet. Biden wanders off into the story about his Uncle Ambrose Finnegan, Uncle Bozy, they called him. And he said that his uncle was the pilot of a single-engine plane in World War II, crashed a plane near New Guinea, and Biden goes on to say that they never found the wreckage, they never found the body, and of course, New Guinea, there's lots of cannibals. So the clear implication was that his uncle was eaten by cannibals. So with a perfectly straight face, he goes off on this thing. So naturally, as is often the case, almost always the case with Joe Biden, the next day, the real story comes out that Uncle Bozy was not a pilot. He was actually a passenger. He was on one of 3 service members in a multi-engine plane that had engine trouble and had to ditch off the coast of New Guinea. And I believe that one of the passengers or pilot survived, and they were able to rescue him. And the other 2, including Ambrose Finnegan, did not survive. But there was no indication that they were ever eaten by cannibals. So it's just so stunning. And here's what's actually even more stunning, or equally stunning. This is verbatim from the New York Times talking about, so first of all, when Karine Jean-St. Pierre was questioned about this, instead of just saying, look, this was a story that was in the Biden family and Joe Biden grew up hearing this, and this was always family lore that, Uncle Bozy was eaten by cannibals. Instead of that, she went into this rambling thing about, well, he was just moved by his uncles serving in the war and all that. It's so she waltzed her way around it. So she acknowledged that last Thursday that President Biden's maternal uncle, Ambrose Finnegan, actually died when his plane crashed into the Pacific Ocean during World War II, and that he wasn't eaten by cannibals. I think we all probably knew that, as Biden implied on two separate occasions last Wednesday. She told reporters aboard Air Force One that the 81-year-old president was merely expressing how incredibly proud he was of Finnegan. Quote, "You saw the president. He was incredibly proud of his uncle's service in uniform. You saw him at the war memorial. It was incredibly emotional and important to him." But here's what's even, and again, not a surprise by any stretch of the imaginations, but this is verbatim from the New York Times account of this. So Biden told steelworkers in Pittsburgh that Ambrose Finnegan got shot down in New Guinea and they never found the body because there were a lot of cannibals, he said in that part. And the New York Times goes on to say, Biden has a long history of telling provably false personal anecdotes or dubious tales for which there is no documentation in an attempt to connect to his audiences. Well, that's lying. So that's the New York Times. For everyone else, that was lying. And let's just try to imagine that Donald Trump had told this story about an uncle getting shot down and they never found him. There were lots of cannibals in the area. So, the assumption was that he was eaten by cannibals. It's so utterly absurd. But then you have the press, the New York Times, covering for him. Again, Biden has a long history of telling provably false personal anecdotes or dubious tales for which there is no documentation. That's lying. And yes, he does have a long reputation for that. He's been a liar his whole life. Joe Biden, one of the things that's always kind of driven me crazy about him, aside from the really shallow intellect, I mean, he's so vapid. But one of the things that's always driven me crazy about him is that propensity for just, spinning these yarns that are completely untrue and then getting covered for it. He also shows every insecure male trait. Like we've all known people like this in our lives. We've all known men like this, right? Biden has forever challenged people to, I'll take you behind the gym. I beat up corn pop or whatever the frig his name was with a chain. I'd like to take Trump behind the gym. Biden even went to the extent of buying the Corvette, like the ultimate tell on male midlife crisis, where you go out and buy a Corvette. So I've always kind of looked at people like this. You think about Biden challenging people to push-up contests. My IQ is higher than yours. I graduated top of my class. He has a 40-plus year litany of absolute lies and always bolstering himself. It's why he wears the aviator sunglasses, right? When I see people like that, especially an 80-year-old wearing the aviator fighter pilot sunglasses, it's just so obnoxious. It's such a blatant tell into this guy's total insecurity about his own manhood and who he is. It's, to me, obnoxious. So I just thought this cannibal, I was almost going to open the show and call it Welcome to Uncle Bosie's Cannibal Cafe, because the one thing I do see with this, with a name like Ambrose Finnegan, what a great name for a restaurant, right? Like Biden's family could start a restaurant and we could all just go... In fact, I don't know, maybe my producer here in the studio take you out to Finnegan's later for a drink and an appetizer. A Mai Tai with a human finger. It's just unbelievable. So also this week, obviously, and oh, by the way, speaking of cannibalism, also this week, the entire Kennedy family came out and said that they will be supporting Joe Biden, not RFK, for president, which we all knew this was coming. It's been, RFK's been very open about how his own family is not supporting him. And again, this is a tell to me on the far left, the woke left, even the Kennedy family. They didn't dump Teddy Kennedy after Chappaquiddick. I mean, there's been so many things in the Kennedy empire and Kennedy dynasty where you'd think, if you were going to turn your back on one of your family members, this might be the time to do it. So I can only think that this goes to RFK's, opposition to the vaccine, his kind of taking down of big pharma, pharmaceutical companies, and these few places, and they are just a few, by the way, where RFK departs from kind of the Democratic mantra. The given positions of the woke left where you have to be all in or you're not in at all. And for the entire Kennedy family, it's pretty stunning. It's not surprising because we knew this was coming, but when you actually hear it and heard different members of his family this week saying that they are enthusiastically supporting Joe Biden and will not support RFK, it just goes to show you how deep this ideology is. And as I pointed out in the very first episode of this program, this is not about changing minds because I have no expectation I'm going to change anybody's mind about how they feel politically. The show is really about trying to explain how more conservative-minded people or traditional Americans look at what's happening and how that figures into the political realm for us. So this isn't about changing minds. I think. And, hate is a word that I really kind of despise, and I try to use it judiciously. I think hate itself as an emotion is very poisonous. But I think it's fair to say at this juncture in the country that the two sides of the political equation here really do hate each other. It's getting so virulent. And we'll get, of course, to the Trump trial and all of that, another just ridiculous episode in American history. But before that, I wanted to touch on these protests now that are getting so utterly out of hand. I think I mentioned last week the Dearborn, Michigan, Death to America chants and these pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas people. It's kind of like an army of protesters. I think you get the text message. It's like a call to duty, a call to arms, or a clarion call from George Soros and the woke left. And you just report to duty at these protests with your Habib or whatever and your pre-printed sign. But it's taking awkward turn. I think it's taking a disastrous turn. You look at last week where these protesters blocked, I think it was the Golden Gate Bridge. And what they're doing now is they're blocking traffic, so they're gluing themselves to the road. They're setting up barricades. And then innocent people on a bridge trying to get to work or do whatever that your daily life calls for, that you're suddenly stuck on a bridge for 5 or 6 hours. You can't back up. You can't turn around. You've got a bridge railing on one side and a Jersey barrier on the other side, so you can't turn around and get in the other lane and just leave. You're stuck there. And so how long do you think it will be before something crazy happens in that scenario? I have to say, I don't think I would have the patience to sit there for 5 or 6 hours while a bunch of spoiled American nitwits, and some of them not even American, I'm sure there's a fair share of illegal immigrants out there, all posture themselves with this ridiculous river to the sea. Half or most of them have no idea what they're talking about, no idea about the history of Israel, and not to mention the blatant, ridiculous contradiction of these are all the same people that call Trump Hitler, Trump supporters Nazis, we're racists, we're homophobes. These are all the same people now out with this horrendous anti-Semitism and making no attempt at all to hide it. They're, in fact, proud of it. So here's what's going to happen, in my opinion. One of these stupid protests where they block traffic, and I don't know why the police just stand there and do nothing. I'm assuming that the police have been ordered to do that. That must come from higher up. Don't let things get worse, but don't move people. So it's only a matter of time before something crazy happens here, or somebody mows down a bunch of people or drives through traffic or flips out and gets angry and does something, because why wouldn't you? You want to miss a flight on a family vacation because you've got a bunch of Habib wearing nitwits, gluing themselves to the road. How long do you think a close the border MAGA protest closing down a major bridge or thoroughfare would last? Do you think the police then, or the overriding authorities then, would allow traffic to be stopped for 5 or 6 hours and emergency equipment can't get through, ambulances can't get through? So you could be literally, without getting hyperbolic or overdramatic, you could be literally costing someone their life by an ambulance not getting through, or fire department not getting through, or people not getting, wherever they need to go. It's just so off the rail crazy that it's hard to believe we're tolerating it. And again, I think the reason we're tolerating it is the country is now thoroughly divided. There's two sides. There's our side, conservative, traditional Americans, which have literally no power. We've lost the press. We've lost our voice almost entirely. We have the CIA, the FBI, the justice system aligned against us. And even so, the only tool that we've ever had is our right to vote and vote our way out of this. And even that's being toyed with and played with to the point where we can't trust. I think most people feel, I certainly do, they can't really trust the outcome of any election. Elections have to be won in landslides now, I think, for the result to be accepted. And God willing, that may be what happens with Donald Trump this next time around. There's certainly a school of thought that could point that way and support that. But I have little faith in that happening. And you spoke last week or the week before about the vibe shift that people are talking about here, and I think there's a certain degree of truth to that. People are coming around. Some people are going, this is too much. So I don't like Trump. I don't consider myself a conservative, but I may go that way in the next election because everything is getting just too far off the rails. But I don't know. My gut tells me that we may be past the point of no return here. I'd like to be more optimistic, but you can probably see underneath my shirt here, if we're wearing the old famous Rosie the Riveter t-shirt. This one is so faded that she kind of has one eye, but in a way, it's emblematic of what's happening to the country. And for those that don't know, Rosie the Riveter, and this came from the World War II Museum in New Orleans. Rosie Riveter was the emblem of the World War II effort, where women, everybody was hands-on, everyone was all in with the effort, whether it was stateside here, working in assembly lines, metal drives, or women, as riveters on these airplane assembly lines. And so Rosie the Riveter became emblematic of that. We can do it. I think today it's more a question of, we don't know if we can do it or if we really even want to. There's so much ambivalence about everything, and it's shed down now into this following generation. They're saying this morning, a new stat out on military recruitment, it's down 66%. And some people attribute that to that the military's changed. It doesn't have the respect that it used to. I don't think that's it. I think there's a lot of respect for people that serve in the military. I think what's happened is that we have a generation of candy ass kids here that don't see the military as an option or something they want to do. Even disenfranchised kids are a lot of times people from poorer communities or tougher family backgrounds. The military was a great avenue for them to get discipline and order in their lives, and offered them education and career opportunities. And I think the other reason maybe people are less apt to join the military right now is because most people don't want to end up in war. And there's so much going on right now. We saw last week with Israel and Iran. So don't know where this is going, kind of launching missiles back and forth. So again, that's escalated, so hard to say where that's going to go in the long run. So I don't know. Maybe the cannibalism thing will catch on, and that might be the best solution for us in the long run. So the Trump hush money trial. I mean, there's almost so much here to dig into that it's kind of crazy. So I've watched this. Of course, the first week or so has just been jury selection. So I don't know how you find an impartial juror in New York who has not heard of Donald Trump or does not have an opinion on Donald Trump. And they obviously had some difficulty doing that. They had some jurors picked, and then they had a few that had to, actually, I think 2 jurors recused themselves after deciding that they really couldn't be impartial about Donald Trump, or they had an opinion about Donald Trump that they felt would make it difficult for them to be impartial. But the whole funny thing about this to me is, and I don't know that, well, I've heard a few other people talk about this, but they're going so far out of their way to present to the public the illusion that the court is so serious about getting impartial jurors. We're really going to take our time. We're really going to scrutinize people. And we want to make sure that we have an impartial jury, while the judge is a Trump deranged judge, Democrat through and through. His daughter, as I understand it, is a political activist for the Democrats. And of course, DA Alvin Bragg, we all know where he stands on Trump. He's made no secret about it. So it's kind of like this whole thing about, making sure the jury is completely sterile. But then you have this judge. So to me, it's like you're going in for surgery, and they've sterilized the operating room, and they've sterilized the air, and everyone's wearing masks and ventilators, and the surgeons have gloves. And then they decide to operate on you with a dirty fork and a dirty steak knife. It's like, what's the point of a sterile, impartial jury when the judge and the DA are outward Trump haters? I mean, it's just ridiculous. And you kind of got to think like, you just want to yell, like, who do you think you're fooling with this, kind of overly cautious jury selection? Well, we all know he's not going to get a fair trial. I mean, they had to change the statute of limitations. They've drummed up 34 felony charges on this hush money thing with Stormy Daniels. My understanding is there's nothing illegal that was done there. They're talking about where the funds came from and all that. There's nothing unusual or illegal about a non-disclosure agreement between parties. This happens all the time, especially with celebrities and high-profile people who they reach a settlement and they say to someone, here, I'm going to pay you this much money. You sign this non-disclosure agreement. You're never going to talk about what happened between us, whether it was business or personal or whatever. So this is all an effort, again, obviously, judicial warfare. They want to put Trump in jail. They want to hamper his campaign. They want to keep him in New York for 2 or 3 months so he can't be out campaigning. I'm almost positive this will backfire on them like it almost always does. I think Trump support will grow. I think he'll get more money as more and more people say, I can't endorse this. I don't even like Trump, but I can't endorse what's happening here. And at the same time, MSNBC, CNN, all of those usual suspects are just orgasmic, euphoric over this trial and the thought of Trump going to jail. There was even a suggestion that he should lose his Secret Service protection if he goes to jail. It's utterly absurd. And again, I'm not here to change minds. There's half the country thinks this is the best thing ever and they want Trump to go to jail. I would just caution everybody, remember, Trump is the emblem of the rest of us. What they really want is half of America in jail. They want traditional Americans in jail. They want Trump supporters in jail. Trump has always said that, he goes, they're coming after me, but they're really coming after you. And I do believe that's entirely true. So be careful what you wish for would be my advice on that. And of course, as we get into this trial over the next several weeks, I'm quite sure what's going to happen is, they're going to humiliate him and try to destroy his marriage and humiliate his family with a bunch of, some of it may be accurate, some of it may be hearsay, but I think we can almost count on that there are going to be lurid graphic details of, this whole Stormy Daniels thing. Again, consensual relationship between two adults. Trump claims it never happened. I don't know, wasn't there, and I'm not in Trump's head, so I don't know if it ever happened. So my analysis is purely on why they're doing it, what the projected outcome is, and what they want the projected outcome to be. I saw last week, at least one day after court, that Trump went out and visited the bodega, and he had a huge crowd of people, Trump supporters. We love you, Trump. We love you, Trump. So it's kind of fascinating that, and my money is on Trump to use this time in New York to do these little mini campaigns and campaign rallies after court while he's in New York. And maybe he'll end up winning New York. Who knows? This could backfire on the Dems in a spectacular way. New York has not gone Republican since Ronald Reagan. But depending on who you listen to and what you believe, there could be an almost Reagan-esque landslide tidal wave coming here. And I don't see any reason to think that this ridiculous Stormy Daniels trial is going to change the dynamic very much either way. I don't think Trump is going to lose supporters over it. I don't think the Democrats are going to gain supporters over it. I do think what it does is it deepens the chasm in the country and ratchets up the, again, I hate to use the word hatred, but it does ratchet up the whole vibe substantially. And I really think, boy, we may look back on this someday and say, really bad move that more people didn't stand up or get in the way of this and say, this is not a good road to go down. This weaponization of the justice system is really not a good thing. You have to stop and think about, these people have the power to take away your freedom. These people have the power to put you in handcuffs and put you in jail. There is no higher power than that in the country, with the possible exception of law enforcement that has the right to use deadly force if they feel that that's what they should do. So I think reasonable, sober people, if there's anyone out there on the other side of this equation that can pull themselves back just enough to say, I really think this is a bad idea, that we need to stop weaponizing the justice system. I have heard lots of people go, Trump's never going to end up in jail. Trump, this will roll off his back. This will be another bump in the road. I'm not so sure. I can't predict the future. They want it so bad. They're so hell-bent on getting him behind bars. They're so hell-bent on any kind of photo op that humiliates Trump and then hence Trump's supporters. And I could go on and on and on. I could do a whole nother half hour on the injustice. Nothing happened to Bill Clinton when he lied to the whole country and wagged his finger, said, I did not have sexual relations with that girl. And of course, he did have sexual relations with a 21-year-old White House intern. I mean, really, really perverted. You stop and think about it. It's pretty disgusting. Not to mention, Bill Clinton's wife using her campaign funds for the Russian dossier and all of that stuff. And now we have Trump, and basically what is a campaign fund-based trial. This is about the money and where the money came from. And we even have Michael Cohen, who's a disturbing human being, and is on tape many years ago defending Donald Trump, saying he's generous, compassionate, not a racist, and then just a few years later saying all completely the opposite about Donald Trump. So I don't know, man. This is a cosmic bunny hole that we are going down these days, and it really, if people can peel themselves back from it, it does transcend politics. It really does. This is about the good of the country and what kind of a country we're leaving for our kids and grandkids. And look, if you're Bill Maher and you don't have kids and you make no secret about the fact that you hate kids and the whole world is about you, just not having any intervention between you doing your show and spending all your free time at the Playboy Mansion, then okay, for Bill Maher, not a big stake in the game. For many of us, though, who do have a stake in the game vis-a-vis kids and grandkids, and having and wanting a country that's recognizable for them and for them to have similar opportunities that I had and my parents had and my parents granted to me, there's a lot at stake here, and this is a very serious game. Thanks for joining us at Uncle Bosie's Cannibal Cafe. Always a pleasure to have you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And by all means, for as long as you can, keep the blue side up.